So first of all, we're going to look at blocking and how blocking works. So in Blood Bowl, the way blocking works is you have an attacker and a defender. So let's just go and pick out some attackers and some defenders. So you have an attacker and you have a defender. And the way that block dice are determined is by relative strength. So, for instance, if you have strength value greater than the opposing strength value, you get a 2-die block. If you have a strength value that's equal, you get a 1-die block. And if you have a strength value that's less than the person you're going against, you get a half-die block, which is the red dice in Level 2. But it basically means you roll 2 dice and your opponent gets to choose the result. And then above and below this, there's 3 dice and third dice. But I'm not going to get into those too much in this video. But for reference, the 3 dice is 2 times your opponent's strength plus 1 is a 3-die. Now, when you throw your block dice, however many you're throwing, it doesn't matter. You throw a 6-sided die that has 5 options on it. So a 1 is a skull, you fall down. A 2 is a both down, where both you and the defender go down, unless you have the block skill. Then 3 and 4 are push, 5 is defender stumbles, and 6 is pow. Defender stumbles knocks the defending player down unless they have the dodge skill, but if they have the dodge skill, you can negate it with tackle. So now we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of blocks. We're going to be looking at how assists are determined, because a lot of new players get confused by assist. So I'm going to set up some demonstrations real quick. So I've set up some examples, and in these examples, all the players are strength 3, so that's not a factor we have to worry about. We're just going to be looking at assist. So in this first example, we have even strength, so you have 1 die against the opposing player, no matter which way you go. In this second example, the blue team has an assist. And an assist happens whenever you have an allied player next to the block target, or the one doing the block. And all an assist does is it gives 1 strength to the attacking or defending player, whoever's getting the assist. So in this example, we have strength 4 for the blue team versus strength 3 for the red team. So if one of these blue players takes a hit, they have a 2-die block against the red player. But the red player will have a red dice against the blue player. To further examine how this works, we're going to look down here. And this one has some interesting stuff going on. So, there's actually a good bit to dissect here. This player, the blue player, has a 1 die against the red player because his assisting piece is marked by an opposing player. So if you're marked, even if you're against one of the attacking or defending players, you do not give an assist unless you have the guard skill. But you won't have to worry about that for the first week or 2 of college. So right here, 1 die. And doing it the other way, 1 die. If we look at the other beastmen and attack this red player, it's going to be a 1 die. Because this beastman is marked by an Amazon, which means that this Amazon gets +1 strength from the assist. So it's strength 3 versus strength 4, but the Amazon has an opposing player marking her. So this beastman gets an assist. So strength 4 versus strength 4, which means that this is also a 1 die either way. Now looking at our fourth little set of players, we have a nice 2x2 square with players in it. And no matter which way anyone attacks in this square, it is going to be a 1-die block, because all assists are negated by having more than one opposing player next to them. So this beastman goes to attack here. You look around for assist. This beastman does not give an assist because it's next to 2 opposing players. Looking at this next set, we have a similar situation as the one above. Amazons have 1 dice against all these players because no one is giving an assist. Everyone is marked by 2 opposing players, so no one gives an assist without the guard skill. Guard skill, again, comes later in the season. Don't have to worry about that right now. And now in our last example, it seems very similar, but this one's a little more nuanced. The blue team actually has 2 dice available for both of the players on the left-hand side. So they attack this Amazon. There is 1 beastman marking only the opposing defender. So this gets to be a nice hit. This Amazon gets to be pushed, whatever. So she goes away. We'll get into pushes in a minute. So she goes over here. And we can actually just push her over there with Blitzes Pusher. So she goes over here. And now we have a similar situation as we had back here. So the other beastman gets a 2-die block against the Amazon. And developing blocks and 2-die blocks like that is a very good thing, and you should aim to do it in your games. How many takes do people have to take to make a tutorial? Fuck. So we've covered blocking, so now we're going to cover push directions and whether to follow or not. Whenever you take a block and you get a push, a POW, or a defender stumbles, you get the option to follow up on the block, occupying the square that the defending player was in originally. Normally, you want to follow up when you're at a strength advantage and you're trying to develop hits for the next turn. Or if you knock the player down, you might want to follow up so that they can't stand up and walk away. And that exerts a lot of pressure and control on the pitch. But we're not going to get into that too much today. So another thing to know is push directions and what implications that has. So if you're diagonal from a player and you take a block, you can push them into 3 different squares. And usually, if you're attacking, you want to push them to the side so you can get closer to the end zone and they can't stop you. And normally, when defending in a vacuum, you want to push them away from the end zone so that it's harder for them to score. A lot of this changes depending on the positioning on the board, where your pieces are, where their pieces are. So don't take those words as a hard and fast rule. Now, if you attack from an orthogonal direction, so you take a block against the Amazon, also has 3 directions they can go. Which one you choose depends on the board state and all that stuff. So now we get into chain pushing. A chain push happens whenever you have a block against a player that gets moved from their original position, and all 3 squares that they're able to go into are blocked in some manner. So in this case, you take a block against the Amazon, and there's Amazons in the way. What happens is this, in this case, is you have another set of blocks exactly like the ones above. But this time, you can treat it as if this Amazon is doing the hitting. So, let's get some different colors. If you take a block diagonally, you have a similar situation as up here. So they can go to the up, to the diagonal, and to the right. However, if you choose to go here, you have a orthogonal hit. To the up, to the left, to the right. And that would be similar over here. These two would be the same. If you have a shape like this is a T shape because it looks like a T. you have a similar situation, except this way, you have straight up is the same as the one above, and then the sides are both the diagonal hits. So these will be the same as one another. And you can do that as long as there's players occupying all these spaces. The easiest way to look for chain pushes is to look for two basic shapes. You've got your T shape, and that means you can have a chain push, and then you have boxes. So that's really good to look out for, because that means you can do chain pushes, which enables crazy stuff that we'll cover in later episodes. On top of looking out for the shapes required to do a chain push, you can also see them and set up your own. So let's say you see most of a box, or you see this little corner piece. This piece is susceptible to being made into either a box or a T-shape. So if you bring your player running up, put them right here, you've created a box, and you can now chain push. Or if you see this corner piece, you can bring your player over here, and you can chain push it from the bottom, and you've made a T-shape. And you can do that with however many players are missing. So if you see two players connected in some sort of way, you can make a chain push if you have two spare players to commit to it. So we've covered chain pushes and blocking, and now we're going to be looking at the sideline. For this demonstration, we're going to assume that this dashed line is out of bounds. It's the sideline. So whenever you take a block against somebody and you have the three push directions, if all of those push directions are obscured or out of bounds, you can surf the opposing player and they take an injury roll. This injury roll does not give SPP, but it removes a player from the pitch, which is very strong. So in this example, all three squares that the Amazon can be pushed to in this block are out of bounds. So this Amazon, assuming she gets pushed, will go out of bounds and take an injury roll. In this example up here, we have a slightly different scenario. Two of these squares are out of bounds, but one is not. What that means is you have to fill that square, and this will be a surf. So you bring one player, put them right there, this diagonal hit, boom, surf. And lastly, we have a hit that is parallel to the sideline. In this example, only one square goes out of bounds. So you need to find a way to block both of the other squares in order to surf the Amazon. There's only really these three scenarios with surfing, and you just got to figure a way to make it work. And then lastly, just as a little side note, if a player has frenzy, they're able to surf from 2 tiles away from the sideline, so you need to be aware of that and look out for it. Now we're going to talk about blitzing. Every turn you get one blitz. The blitz allows you to attack then move, or move and attack with the same player. So if you're this beastman and you want to hit the Amazon, you make this player blitz, and they can go and take a block against the Amazon. In this bottom example, you can blitz the beastman on the left, hit the Amazon, and then come over here and give an assist to the second beastman so that you have another 2-die block. So now we're going to talk about the downsides of blitzing. When you blitz, it takes a movement to do your block. So in this scenario, if you got a both down on the Amazon and you have block, you would only be moving 5 squares with this beastman. Whereas the beastman over here to the side can move 6 because he has not blitzed. Furthermore, when you are blitzing, you can neither pass nor hand off the ball. So if you're this Amazon, or let's change the scenario up a little bit. So if you're the Amazon and you go for a blitz on the ball and you get a knockdown, you may or may not want to follow up, because when this ball scatters, if you catch it, you cannot pass it or hand it off to another player. So now we're going to talk about dodging. Dodging is whenever you're attempting to walk away from an opposing player while they're standing up. And so in this case, your elf dodges away. Agility 4 means that they have a 2+ on a dodge into 0 enemy tackle zones. Enemy tackle zones are just all the squares around a player. So if we look at this beastman that you're connected to, all these squares and the one you're standing on are their tackle zones. So if we look at the example on the right, we've got tackle zones here, and then tackle zones here. That's hard to see, so we're going to change color. And the only factor that matters for dodging on the board, besides skills, is how many tackle zones you are dodging into. It doesn't matter how many you're dodging out of, it's how many you're dodging into. Each tackle zone makes the dodge harder by -1 on your results. So here, dodging into 1 tackle zone, that's a 2+ for the elf. Dodging into 1 tackle zone is a 3+. And dodging over here into 2 tackle zones is a 4+, all the way up to a 6+ dodge. Now, there are a couple skills that affect dodging that you usually will see 1 or 2 of in a game until higher TV against mutation access teams. So the Croxagore, the Kislev Bear, they have Prehensile Tail. Prehensile Tail removes 1 from the results of the die roll for dodging away from it. So if you're based on a Croxagore, it's essentially acting as a tackle zone that you're dodging into. Another skill that affects dodging slightly is Tentacles. Tentacles, in order to dodge out of, you have to succeed on a tentacle roll. But if you fail the tentacle roll, you do not fail a dodge and you do not turn over. Finally, there is a beneficial skill for dodging called Stunty. Stunty is on all Stunty teams. And it's also on Lizard Skinks. And what Stunty does is it means that your dodge roll is not affected by what tackle zones you're dodging into. It's only affected by your agility and dodge affecting abilities. So like Prehensile Tail. So a Lizard Skink, for example, can dodge through as many tackle zones as it wants to, always on a 3+, unless it has an agility increase. And then finally, there is the tackle skill, which negates the dodge skill, which re-rolls your dodges. If that ever happens, you can still use a team re-roll to re-roll the dodge. All right, good.